What is good, people? Welcome back to today's podcast. We're in different settings with the main man himself, Mark, down at Wimbledon. This is new gear, by the way, mate. So if it goes wrong halfway through, then just I'll soon tell you. But no, cheers for coming on, mate.
Pleasure.
Like I do with everyone, where did it all start?
My coaching or just
everything. Yeah,
everything.
Where's it from?
Well, my coaching really. Where did it all start? Blimey, tough question. So, I think your coaching starts from your experiences. As a player and just your general life experiences growing up. Really. So, as a player, I lived on a big council estate, and my brother was 7 years older than me. So my early playing sort of days was playing out on the estate, and because my brother used to take me everywhere, and his mates were obviously 7 years older.
Yeah.
My early playing days were playing with kids anything from 3, 4 up to 7 years older than me. So that kind of formed how I was as a player early on, sort of like tough tackling, no fear. That led me to get picked up by Fulham from an early age when I was 10. So I was at Fulham doing really well as a youth player until I got injured, really. And I got injured, had a series of injuries, and didn't fall out of love with the game, but had a massive mental effect on me because, like all lads, all I ever wanted to be.
How old were you at that time?
So I was 16 when I had my first injury. So I played my first youth team game when I was 14. I hadn't even turned 15. So things were going well for me. I was one pace, to be fair, but I was technically good. And things were going well. We played Arsenal, and I hadn't even turned 15, and I come on for the second half and done really well. So things were going well, and then I just had a series of injuries, and because I lacked pace, that didn't help me. It made me even slower.
Don't we all, mate? Don't we all?
Which I couldn't afford, and I never actually got released from Fulham in the end. Things just kind of started to go a bit wrong, and I left. I was quite headstrong when I was young, and and I tried to get back in a couple of years later, but went and played semi-professionally. And then I just had reoccurrences of injuries, really, and I stopped. And that had a sort of dramatic effect on me mentally. And as I said, I didn't fall out of love with the game because football was my life. It was my family's life. But I kind of wanted to be away from it a little bit. And then, so I got a job uptown. I worked uptown and started to do really, really well there. And then they had a team that used to play the Dutch version of them every year, basically. And they used to go to Holland and get spanked every year. so a few of the lads said to me, would you do some coaching sessions?
And how old were you at this point?
So I would have been probably 22 then, 23.
And was everyone kind of the same, similar age? Or
no, there was a mixture. There was a few older, but mainly young lads because it was like a music company. So they said, will you do some sessions? So I went over to Regent's Park with them and did a few sessions, and about 5 or 6 sessions. And then we went over to Holland and I went with them because I got to the stage where I could play but not play. So I kind of managed to get a half out myself. Anyway, we won 4-2 and the guys were like ecstatic because they used to get spanked 5-6-0 every year. The Dutch were kind of very much like, wow, what's happened? You're really different. And that just really lit some fires in me. I just thought, mate, there's something I could do here.
Do you think that kind of, talking about your injuries there as well, do you think a mixture of that and obviously being released and like going mentally how hard that is at a young age?
Yeah.
Do you think having a strong kind of family around you, obviously with your brother and that kind of like they're older than me, I have to get on with it, kind of headstrong. Do you reckon that kind of helped you with those things moving forward? Or?
Yeah, not massively. My brother, yes. My dad, I felt just massive pains of guilt. Not that my dad was. Because my dad was everything to me, and I felt like I'd let him down. And my dad was just a very traditional man, and he wasn't. He had high expectations of me, but I carried that around with me. That I'd really, that I'd let him down. Because not having a career. So my mum was kind of floated in between. She loved her football, but she was also thought that I should have done better in education because I wasn't stupid, but kind of football was everything. It was one of those typical scenarios, really. But my brother was always supportive behind me. But that's when I got the real fires for for coaching, and I kind of went on my prelim, then coaching badge, and then I just thought, this is something I could do, and that kind of stayed with me for a while. But the problem I had though, Joe, I then started to do really well at work, and I had a good job. I was earning good money.
So you were just still like not part time, but you were still doing. Obviously, you weren't full time in coaching at this point.
No, not at all. I just did it.
What were you doing at the time?
So I was working for this music company, as I said, the Performing Rights side, and I started to do well there. So the guys, just because of my background in football, they just said, would you? And I was doing a little bit of work at youth clubs of an evening and stuff. And so I just said, I'll do some sessions for you. So I had no coaching background. It was just because I played, at a good level. They asked me to do some sessions. So that kind of stayed with me. But again, I was in this situation where I had a good job. Then I met what was my wife, and then we had kids. And it's kind of, how do I get out of this to start a coaching career? Because then I started to look at my own experiences when I was a player, and I felt, I had some decent coaches, but I wasn't particularly inspired, if I'm honest, by the coaching and the education that you got. So I then decided to take a punt, and me and my wife opened a business. So we borrowed sort of a lot of money, and our thinking behind it was, if the business worked well, then I could sort of go off and start coaching, whether it be part-time or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was a way back in it. So I look back, and it was pretty foolhardy now, because we borrowed a significant amount of money. We had two little ones. So it could have all gone so wrong. But fortunately, the business went really well. And then after a year, that allowed me to start coaching. But in terms of Wimbledon, it was just a chance meeting. I went down the gym, and I bumped into a guy called Tony Wilson, who was at Fulham when he was 2 years older than me, but he was really good to me when I was a young player. And I just said to him, I'm looking to coach. And he said, I do the under-9s at AFC Wimbledon. So I was like, okay. And he said, yeah, just come down. And I went down one night. I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do. Yeah, and, I was based on my own previous experiences and how I didn't deal with things very well mentally. And I had this big thing about empowering players, and, and I went down and he let me do exactly what I wanted, and I stayed there. And I had real success with this age group, which then led to, Wimbledon were then only in the Ryman Prem, so they were still non-league. But it then led to the guy who was looking after the football there, a guy called Nigel Higg, offered me a job and said, look, do you want to could you restructure the whole setup? Because it was all Sunday league. Yeah. The parents were this
was 2004, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because obviously they founded AFC Wimbledon 2002.
So So, but that probably would have been about 2007.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
When he said, look, we need to try and get ourselves ready if we become a professional football club. So we had parents were running the sides. So he asked me to kind of restructure the setup, as well as do the under-18s and get them in collaboration with a college, so they had an education, and they played in a midweek league. So it started from there, really, and he entrusted me in doing it, and it just grew from there. So it's been an incredible journey. We literally were playing in parks with coats for goals and that kind of thing.
How is that? Like you say, obviously, like luck and a lot of things that I do personally, and a lot of other coaches that I know, kind of, it's all about luck. It's obviously, if you didn't have a massive playing background, and luck is a major part. But what is the one thing that you say to coaches or say to people that don't have a playing background and want to obviously, so many good coaches out there, but actually get that foot in the door? Like you said, you had a wife with 2 children. Yeah. And okay, I don't know, let's say you're on an average wage, and then they go, oh, you've only got 8 hours a week with the under-10s. Yeah. How does someone deal with that, do you reckon?
I just think perseverance, really. I don't mean this in a rude way, but I find that a lot of coaches, they want everything really quickly. Yeah. And, and if I look back, I volunteered. I was a volunteer for Wimbledon for nearly 2 years. So I didn't even get paid. There was one parent who asked me to do some extra stuff with 3 lads, and he used to pay me separately. But I volunteered because it was what I wanted to do. People could say, "Oh, well, you're fortunate because you had your own business," but it wasn't fortunate. I took a massive gamble. And I just think some coaches, they come in and they are good, but they just want everything to happen really, really quickly, and you haven't. You've just got to be really patient. and I think you have to find solutions. If you're struggling financially, you just have to find ways. You know,
I was going to say, I think that's a massive thing that, like you said, coaches want things now, and I think you can always tell if someone's a coach like that because, like, you sit there and you go, well, if you have bills to pay, it needs to be paid by this date. You've got to make it work, and if you don't, then you don't. And I think if you want to be a coach enough, you will do what it takes.
100%. And you look at it, Joe. You know, part of coaching is educating young players to be robust, resilient. You know, keep going when times are hard.
Yeah.
And as a coach, if you're kind of like, I don't want to do that job after coaching to earn extra money.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's it. That's part of your pathway. And you know, I can honestly say for 7 years, you know, I was working 7 days a week. You know, from 8 o'clock to...
Did you still have the business at the time?
Still had the business.
And so were you doing that as and when you could?
So no, my wife sort of ran the business. I still used to look after some of the paperwork, but obviously when you've got your own business, anyone to tell you, you know, it's all consuming. You come home. You discuss it of an evening, you know, and the business was 7 days a week as well. If I'm completely honest, it wasn't completely healthy. We ended up selling the business after 12 years because the business was 7 days a week. I was working 7 days a week, so it did have a bit of an effect on our relationship.
You had a wife, 2 kids, of course.
So you know, we look back now and we probably kept the business for 3 years too long. You know, I think we ended up having it 12 years and we sold it because it was successful, but we probably could have sold it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But again, if you want something,
You've got to go do it. 100%.
You've got to do it. So there's no point having regrets. You know, there were things we give up with regards to our children, but then there's also things. There's personality traits that they've got now because they experienced 2 parents who were working are doing things. So although, you know, we could look back and regret and go, oh, wish we'd spent a little bit more time with our children. Now we're now seeing the benefits in them, how they are as young sort of teenagers, and how they're going for things, you know, because that you've installed certain things,
traits in
them.
Yeah.
So and that's you know, I'm a big believer that your life experiences kind of form a lot of what you are as a coach and a lot of your beliefs and things like that. So you know, my biggest advice is you've just got to have perseverance and you've got to roll with the knocks, and especially if you haven't had a career. You know, even though I was doing great as a young player.
Yeah.
When you haven't actually had a professional career, you're no one.
Yeah, like a proper, like I said, if you've not... Even I think even players now, like, you see so many ex-pros that necessarily, like, not disrespectfully, but have played maybe League One, League Two for the whole of their career.
Yeah.
And they then go... They might have their UEFA A, might even have their pro, and go... Oh, you've got to go get a job in the National League. And I think to take that kind of ego sometimes to some people, like you said, if you want to be a coach enough, if you want to be enough, you'll got to go do it, I think.
You got to do it. And you know, when I started doing my badges, you know, I found that you'd walk into, you know, when you did my B licence, you'd walk into... And a lot of people would know each other. The pros would all know each other.
You just walk in, hi.
And you walk in and they're kind of like... I mean, I knew some people because I'd started the academy from scratch at Wimbledon. So there were certain people I know, but certainly when I did my A licence, you know, all the pros knew.
When was this?
Oh, blimey.
I'm taking you back now.
Me, Joe. You're taking me back now. I don't know, it must have been...
Was that a weird experience, though, like, for you, even though at that point you've worked in professional football for a long enough time? But like you said, even as an adult, even me as 24, 25, like walking into a room and everyone knows each other. But did you still have that same mindset, like, I'm here for me, like I'm here to further my career?
I used it as a challenge. So, you know, when you got your chance to coach, you know, because you'd go in and as you said, a lot of them would know each other because they knew each other as players. But that's your challenge. You kind of think, well, by the time I leave this course, you know, will they know you? And you back your coaching ability. And you think, you know, once those pros see you coach, then the mindset changes and
100%.
And they want to start talking to you. And, you know, when you go through those experiences, even as a young player, you know, I remember, you know, when I played for London, etc., everybody knew you. But then when I went for England schoolboy trials, it was different because it's the next level on and you feel a little bit of a click and people...
And it's kind of like with coaching in general. Like, no matter if you're coaching grassroots, no matter if you're coaching, like, probably when you came into the first team here, players are those coaches on that course. They don't know you really. They don't
No.
know what you're about. You're not like, it's not like Jose's walking through the door and everyone's like, oh wow, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But,
and it's part of it. If you let it, you can't get offended by it. You just have to earn people's respect. And so, you go into those environments and you think, well, you have to earn their respect, and those things are good for you. Those feelings of little bit of nerves. You do your first session, and you might be coaching someone who's played in the Premier League, but that's good. I mean, that's what helps you grow. That's the challenges you need. So, that's where it started. And so at Wimbledon, I've done everything. I've always done the youth team, but I've done.
Did you always want to work with? That leads me on to my next question. Really, did you always want to work with young players, or is that just kind of something that you've found yourself going into, and especially now with the first team? Now I look at Wimbledon now, and I'm like, it's a lot of young players in there. Does that kind of stem from your philosophy, or just from how it by chance?
It just stemmed from my personal experience. I almost felt, if I'm honest, I went into coaching. Probably, it was almost like as a bit of a therapy because I felt I'd let my dad down, because I knew how I felt as a young player, not being a professional. I kind of almost went into it, and I thought, I just want to bring these young people's dreams
to come true. Yeah, of course.
I just want to help young people. I don't want anyone to ever feel like I felt, and that's just kind of grown and manifested as I've gone on. And but because obviously not everyone's going to be a professional footballer.
No, yeah.
So that's kind of even grown in terms of I've looked at, well, you got to be. When I first went in, I was probably like, I want to make everyone.
Everyone's going to be.
Everyone is a pro. I don't want them to feel the pain I felt. But then that's grown as you kind of realise, well, that's unrealistic. So then the people skills side of what we do at Wimbledon and the academy has come in. So you go, well, if they don't make it as a pro, they're going to leave us really confident people, and that they're going to go on to be a success elsewhere. And that's probably one of the things that we're proudest of, is that we've run a really strong life skills program, a program where we feel that we make them robust.
Does that stem from yourself, or when you were obviously in the academy?
Yeah, so certain things that we just incorporated lots of things, because modern day life, I think, if I look back when I was younger, that there was a lot of things that kind of built robust and resilience naturally. A lot of lads lived on council estates.
Yeah, of course, no,
and stuff like that. And I used to go and work with my dad's summer holidays. Things that just don't happen now. Paper rounds and all these kind of things that kind of just don't happen. And I think a lot of people go, oh, it's not like it used to be, but it's just a different life. It's just a different way of living. Yeah. It's not any better. It's not any worse. It's just different. So I've always been big on trying to give young people those kind of experiences. So, for example, here at the training ground where you are now, I did a thing called Camp KCL with the under-18. So we stayed on site for a week. So we all slept on we just air beds, did our own cooking, did our own washing. So
how did that go?
Great, they loved it. I mean, at first it was like, what we're doing, but we stayed here for a week. We all slept in the room in there, and said we were up at 6 every morning, and someone would start making the breakfast. Everyone else would be doing their washing, hanging their washing out. Yeah. And within that week, I'd bring in different people, nutritionists, and then the lads would go shopping, and they'd start making good food choices. And we've always done things like that. And what you see is people haven't changed. So
no, of course,
they haven't changed. And first couple of days were a bit difficult for them. But what was wonderful, got to the third day, they're not even looking at their phones because they're not interested. They're outside playing head tennis, or they're either doing stuff, preparing stuff. And they kind of revert back to what we are, which is functional people.
Yeah, of course.
So we've always done things like that. We've always got the lads out in the community, like our youth players, our young players on match days. We have them selling programs.
I think that's so important, especially as a coach like myself, training players that I train, whether they're kids or professional players. I'm not here to just make you hit the ball better, all this stuff. Yeah. If I can make you how you think about the game, because then again, how you think as a person, you're going to become a better player. In my opinion, I think you do.
I agree, and it's just as well if you give them. If you put them in little situations, so when we first got them to sell programs, they're going out there a little bit quiet.
Yeah.
But then we made it like a competition for them who can sell the most programs, and then you had lads they're almost like street market, shouting out who wants their programme, and then they've run out and they're running back to get more.
Yeah.
And they made a comment, and the fans loved it. And again, it's just those people skills, because you hear so many coaches now talk, players don't communicate like they used to. They don't talk. They just moan and whine. But it's like, well, what do you actually do? Apart from just having a go at them saying, come on, talk more. Well,
what's that going to do?
It's not going to do. And people just get frustrated. So it's just about thinking outside the box and go, well, what kind of things can we do to encourage them to talk more? Because no young lad walks in going, well, I don't want to talk just to watch.
You're right, Gaffer. Do you know what I mean? Out of nowhere.
Everyone's different, and some don't need to talk. They might express themselves in a different way. So we've just always been big on developing the person as well as the player.
Yeah.
Because I think if you get confident, empowered young men, they just take it onto the football pitch.
And I think, like from a coaching perspective and from a results as a manager now, I think we've seen many managers and teams where you can go, they're not playing for the manager. That kind of respect or that kind of relationship that you've got is kind of gone. Yeah. And I think, like you said, if you can have that kind of cohesion, they respect you as a person first and foremost, they're going to run through more rules. Like you look at like your Klopps, like even Harry Redknapp, for example. People always say, I wasn't always the most tactical, but played for him 100%.
Yeah, and I think being selfless is the biggest quality you can have, and just giving yourself to the players. I think a player will see through you very quickly. Yeah, if they realise it's about you. So again, because of my experiences, I can honestly, genuinely say everything I do is about the player, because I just want the best for the player. And I think players see through you if they think you're saying the right things, but you don't back it up in your actions. So, I genuinely do give myself to the players, because I want the very best for them. There's obviously, within that, we have values, etc. And if the players step outside of that, then they see a very different side of me. Good cop, bad cop goes to the because you have to have that. You have to have that. But generally, my job is to basically make them the very best they can be. And I don't think there's anyone in life who doesn't want to get better. And I think once they realise that you genuinely want to make them better, even if you get things wrong, or even if you're making tough decisions and you're leaving them out of the team or the squad, I think if they genuinely see that you care and you want to make them better, then you can build that relationship. And that comes from the staff here as well. They can see that we're all in here and we all want to improve. And I think sometimes people worry about that. I'll often talk about I want to be the best I can be, and I think sometimes people don't want to talk like that because it looks like a weakness. Because if you're the manager or you're the head coach, you should know everything. You should have all the answers. Yeah. And no one's got all the answers. No. And that's why I'm a big believer that you should come to solutions as a collective, come together. And so I'm very big on trying to have an environment where the players take as much control as possible, because when it comes to a Saturday or a Tuesday and on the pitch, they're the ones who are in control.
My next question, and we spoke about young players a lot, especially League One, League Two. Why do you think it is that clubs don't necessarily... So if that, for example, I don't know, you need to buy a centre-back or you need a new centre-half, just to cover or anything like that. Yeah. Cheers, mate. Thank you for that. Why is the first thing, do you reckon, in most clubs' head, let's go out and, let's buy from XYZ? What is the thing that makes it... Why can't you, to people that are listening, why can't you just pick an 18-year-old out who can do, if you need a big centre-half, why can't you just grab him from the under-23s, in your opinion? Or why do you not think it's as easy as that?
I think there's a mixture. I think there's just natural fear. Obviously self-preservation. Managers don't get a lot of time now.
No, 100%.
So they will probably go safety first, or what they think is safety first. So I don't think it's any one thing. I think there's a mixture of things. I think positions can dictate as well. Like you said, centre-back, it's a lot easier to possibly be braver with an attacking player, younger player,
of course,
than it is as a centre-back. And I can fully understand that. But I think, I don't think it's any one thing. I think it can be a mixture of things, really. But, personally, I always want to try and have one eye on the bigger picture, you know. And I think that's the same. It's not just young. I think it's the same with size. You know, we look at size as a comfort in this country. You know, so you hear scouts, you hear people talk about, he's a good size. I mean, I don't even know what that means. You know, what's a bad size?
Well, isn't it something like I when I was at uni many moons ago, and my lecturer was a scout or something like that in recruitment, and we all stood up, and he was like, right, if you were at 10 years old and you were this height, stand up. If you weren't, sit down.
Yeah.
If you're at 13, you were this height, sit down or whatever. Right. And then I think it was like 50 of us. There's only one person left at the end.
Right.
Because obviously, like you said, that size and...
The size and, I mean, and we just say things, I think, I call them footballisms over a period of time. I think people have just started to say things in football and now they say it and they don't really know.
No, I have no idea.
They have no idea what they say. It's a good size. He's a good frame. Do you know what I mean? Like we talk like they're pieces of...
He's 14. You don't know what he's on.
Yeah, exactly. So I try and... My own personal thing is to just look how they affect a game of football.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for me. And if they affect a game of football in the way that you want, then everything else is irrelevant. And, so I put young Obasal in the side, and he was nowhere near our first team in the running. And it's just because I believed he could affect a game of football. So he's 5'7", he's...
There's nothing wrong with that, mate.
No, exactly. He probably weighs no more than 9.5 stone.
Jesus.
But, you watch him in training and you believe that he can affect a game of football. And for me, that's all that matters at the end of the day. It's the same we relate experience with age. And again, that's not always the case. I don't think age and experience always marry up. Obviously, of course they do sometimes.
Yeah, normally.
But one of our biggest players, in the running last year was 23. But he brought experience in the way he played, in the way the way he conducted himself. So for me, it's just how do they affect a football match? And then if you look like that, then obviously it's easier to be, I wouldn't say braver, but to make those decisions where you trust younger players.
What is it like with kind of the players in the club, like even here, for example, when you necessarily bring a player up and you've seen him, obviously it's different with you because you've seen a lot of these players literally from kids to now where they are. What's it like communicating that with maybe senior players in the team? And do they just kind of take your judgment because they have that relationship with you?
Yeah, to be fair, the senior players here have been fantastic. I think because they know I've been here for such a long time. And the senior players that have been here a while as well. To be fair, they've been absolutely brilliant with the young players. In fact, they help the situation because they come in and they help them and they put the right sort of demands on them. So I haven't really experienced any problems with that at all. We've got a young squad anyway. I think we've got the second youngest squad in all 4 divisions. Probably be the youngest this year. Yeah. So it's not like we've got loads of senior players anyway. But the senior players have been absolutely fantastic.
Why are you successful then, in terms of?
Well, I haven't been yet, Joe. No, it's only half a season.
But in terms of why is the club? Like you're saying, obviously, like someone says Wimbledon to me, I'm going, League One club. Yeah, 100%. Why have clubs that have gone down necessarily, and they're way bigger in terms of stature, what they've got in the budget? Is it down to the whole club? It has a methodology, it has a philosophy?
I think that underdog spirit of the club is still very prevalent.
Little old Wimbledon.
Yeah, Wimbledon, backs to the wall. But if anything, we want to change that now because we have done fantastically well to get to where we are, on minimal resources, and that's going to be the same this season. I'd be surprised if there's anyone got a lower budget than we got this season. But we also want to change that. We don't want to be fighting survival every year. I feel like that's a small club mentality. We want to become a really established League One club. That's the plan. But I think in terms of why we've managed to do what we want to do, I think it is that it goes back to the history of the club. With the academy, we've always strived to be, that doesn't matter who we're playing, whether it's Chelsea or whatever, we're Wimbledon. You go there and we expect to win. And we've instilled that mentality into our young players because of the history of the club and what the club's achieved in the past. So that's kind of seen us in good stead, I think, in terms of managing to survive. But we've fought probably 5-6 relegation battles now in League One, and that's the key now, is that next step. We really want to try and become a well-established League One club, not a club that fights for
just
silence.
about
Yeah, because then you hope you can go to the next level. We are where we are as resource-wise. That's not going to change. We're a fan-owned club. We're always going to be a fan-owned club, and you either look at that as a weakness.
Yeah.
And you moan because you go, well, we're fan-owned, so we're never going to have a big budget. Or you go, wow, what a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing to play and work for a fan-owned club. When you look at some of the vulgarity that's been going on recently.
Oh, yeah, Big Six.
And does go on in football. People throw money at things and then it goes wrong and then someone else comes back. We're fan-owned, so we want to try and use that as a huge strength and, think outside the box, rather than use it as a weakness, as in, we're fan-owned, so we can't achieve anything.
Yeah.
We're going to go, well, we're fan-owned. What a great reason to achieve things. So,
100%.
Yeah.
What's training like on a day-to-day basis as a professional manager? Obviously, the podcast and what we do is obviously Road to Pro, and we're kind of showing people the journey of what it takes to become pro and how to do it.
Okay.
What is it actually like for you as a manager? Obviously, as a coach, like the preparation that goes into it, I know it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But what is it actually like on a day-to-day basis? Are you a type that you're always outside on training, you lead everything? Like, what is it actually like for people that don't, well, 99.9% of the country has no idea what goes on in training?
Yeah, no, I'm always outside.
Is it as intense as everyone thinks it is, or is it?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in. That's the kind of next stage we're at now. I mean, the first thing I'd say is not a lot's changed from when I did development to first team. The key thing for me was when I got offered the job, I had all these ideas in terms of development, and I'd probably always been told that first team's completely different. You can't do that at first team level. They need to be told you can't do that at first team level. And as I said, I'm massive on players taking ownership. So when I got the opportunity interim, the first thing I wanted to be true to myself and give players ownership, etc. So that side of it never changed. In terms of the intensity and the planning in training, I really expect the players to look after the intensity, and that's in line with our values. So we've got boards at the training ground with our on the pitch values, off the pitch values, and it's so key that the players drive it. I don't want the coaches to drive it. I want the players to drive it, and we've got various methods that we use so that the players drive the intensity. And I feel our job as coaches is to be there to add the detail or give them things to think about and different scenarios to training. But I certainly want them to be driving the intensity all the time. In terms of planning, we just, when we plan sessions, it's how we can get the most out of every session. So we look at every session, and we have 6 different areas that we want to hit, and we look, which basically relate to the game and the mental side of the game, as well as the physical side, the tactical side, the decision making.
Yeah.
So we look at those sides of the game, and when we plan, we kind of look and go, well, where do we think this session's going to hit? Mm-hmm. Is it hitting high there, medium there, and is it going to hit low there? And we don't really want anything to hit low. If it hits low, it's like, well, what can we change? What can we do? What we can add? So everything's either medium or high. And that's part of the process of planning. And then when we come back, we reflect on the session, and we kind of go, well, what could we have done? Because I think it's very easy to come away from a session that hasn't gone how you wanted it to go, and go, oh, the players weren't at it today.
Yeah, I think that's such a
it's cop out.
It's like, well, no, that's your point is to think on your feet. If it's not going well, change it. Do you think?
And I think it's a cop out. I think they go, the players weren't at it today because it's lack of self.
It's not me.
It's lack of self-reflection. If the players weren't at it today, well, you've got a problem, because if they're turning up to work and they're not at it, well, why aren't they at it?
You're not instilling.
Well, either your environment isn't stimulating enough, you're not inspiring enough. So you've got to look at yourself first and foremost, because if you've got a player in the building who turns up to training and doesn't want to train, well, then you've recruited wrong.
We have an issue.
Yeah, so you've got issues. So we always look at ourselves, and then when in the reflection process, we look and go, well, what could we have done to get maybe that, so maybe we did a technical session and the skill, the decision making was very low. Could we have added something in there to move that up?
Could we have stepped in earlier? Could
But
we have done
certainly
more?
by the time you get to your games, whether it's a 7v7, 8v8, 11v11, you want everything to be high. And it might be just something simple, Joe, by just adding, a little scenario in that just takes the tactical side up even higher. You might. I'm trying to give you an example. We might do an 8v8 and we'll have a 30-second run-off area. So all of a sudden that 8v8 becomes a 7v8.
Yeah.
So you want to see how do the 8 react? Do they go on the front foot because they're against the 7? How do the 7 react? Tactically, who fills in for the guy who's gone on the 30-second run? Little things like that. And then the player who's come on the 30-second run, he gets back, he's now blowing, he receives the ball. So
what does he do with it now?
What does he do with it? Because he's blowing technically. So you do things like that. We even do. We send the keeper out sometimes. So then you got the team without the keeper, and they've got the ball. What are they going to do? Are they going to try and keep possession? Just little things where they're just thinking on their feet all the time.
And I think, well, obviously, I see it on a daily basis. Like whether I'm talking to coaches or I'm on the training pitch myself, and you get so many people go, oh, so I've got this here, and we've got 95 cones, and we're doing it.
Yeah.
And even me, I sit and think, why? Like you said, why are you actually doing that?
Yeah.
Do you think you see a lot of coaches overcomplicate things when they don't really need to?
Yeah, I think it happens, but again, I think it's part of your pathway. When I look back at when I started coaching, I think it's
oh, of course, yeah.
It's natural. You want to do a great session. So you plan
the details,
and the details, and this is how it's going to go. And by the end of it, I'm going to got that in. But over time, just through experience, you realise that you don't need to do all that. It's a lot simpler than you think, and it's more about how you deal with the players and the messages and when you are giving them detail, the detail you're giving, and I think that's just when I started, technique was my thing. I was obsessed with technique.
Yeah.
So my sessions were very, very high technically, but when I look in terms of decision making and things like that, they would have been very low. And you look at the players you produce, and you see that. You see that they're very technically proficient, but maybe they lack a bit of that. So I think that's just part of the pathway. And I think if you reflect and you get yourself out and about watching enough coaches and different types of coaches in different sports, you just grow as a coach. I think that's the key. Everyone knows something more than everyone knows something more than.
Yeah, of course.
Well, there's a saying that Steve says, someone knows more than everyone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's always something you're going to pick up. There's always, I can honestly say I've never been anywhere in a different environment and not come away with something.
I think that's so crucial. Even yourself, people see you. If I say, "Oh, right, professional manager," they think, "What do you mean? What can he learn from?" I don't know, Joe Blogs down the road. I think it's the little things like that makes the difference with the coaches.
We had a guy come in the other day from, I don't want to sound semi-pro football, but kind of nearest lowest level.
Of course, yeah.
And we played him in the London Senior Cup. And we were really impressed. They were really good. And we invited, the coach said, could I come in? And he come in for a day. He's a fascinating guy. Seriously fascinating. We're making notes. Some of the stuff he's and it's nonsense. Everyone, you'll always pick things up.
Oh, yeah.
So I've always taken myself to different sports as well, because I think you look at footballers, if I go back to how am I going to have success in producing pro players, I looked at a lot of individual sportsmen, and I thought to myself, in terms of the mental side of it, if I could, because my mate was a professional cyclist, for example, and I saw his dedication compared to probably myself and a lot
some
of
the players,
and you go, this he's on a different
level,
level. So I always thought if I could produce a player that understood the team and the we and the not me, but at the same time had the mental approach that an individual sportsman would have, then you got jackpot, really.
100%.
And you look at players like Ronaldo, and that's what he's got. He's got the mentality of an individual sportsman, but he plays a team game.
What are some of the players that you've worked with in training or in whatever level you've been at? And you just, I think we've all been there as coaches. You sit there and go, bloody, what did he just out of the How does he do that?
Yeah.
Is there any players that you could sit there and go, I've seen them do something and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Whether on like at the club or at any kind of place you've been at.
Yeah, loads of players. I mean, we've got young lad Anthony Hartigan now who technically does things completely off the scale.
Yeah.
But it's our job now to get him, like, he's played over 100 league games at League One, but we know he hasn't fulfilled his potential. And I won't go into it, there's various reasons why. And that's our job now to look at the other aspect of it. But technically, he's ridiculous. He just does things, but doesn't always bring that out onto the pitch for various reasons. And we talk about that's our job as coaches, to look and go, well, how can we get that out?
Yeah, definitely.
I know it's in there.
No,
it's how we can get. But no, you see it all. You see it all the time. But I love the player. And we've had them here who probably sometimes the club haven't always backed that player you see who's just got that unbelievable hunger. And they're the ones I'll always back. And I think sometimes coaches see the technically excellent players or the players with certain things, and they go with those players. And I think sometimes I love the players who've got that hunger, because there's no limit to where they can take themselves.
100%. If anyone can hear that wasp that's just come into the room, it's sat on that window and Jack's behind the camera and does not look impressed. What would you say to anyone? What's a game day like for you? What's the hardest part of the day on a Saturday, whether you're home or away? What's the one bit or what do you do different to, say, most coaches or managers?
Well, I'm massively process driven, and you say things like
you
this.
You seem very chilled out as a manager.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to stay chilled out. As I said, as long as the players are within our values, then I want to remain process driven. And the reason for that is because it stops you being knee jerk. It's not healthy to be knee jerk, win, lose or draw. If you win a game, everything's not great. If you lose a game, everything's not falling apart. So I'm hugely process driven, and I think when you talk like this now, they go, "Oh, here we go. He's the new wave of manager." It's always been like that. There's always been managers. I just think we label things now. We've just become better at labeling things. But you listen to old interviews of managers. You listen to Bill Shankly, you can see he was massively about the person,
100%.
Hugely about the person, and there was massive processes in there. Even you go back to the old Wimbledon under Dave Bassett, the style of football wasn't everyone's idea of football, but there was massive processes behind what Wimbledon did. Even though they were very direct, to make that work, it was hugely process driven. So,
it's like I don't know about, for example, like Sam Allardyce.
Yeah,
people think Sam Allardyce is this big Route 1 football manager. Him and Arsene Wenger were probably the main pioneers of bringing sports science, nutrition to England. Like you said, they label people.
So what we've done, Joe, we've kind of built a Wimbledon wall, really, which is and it sits there at the bottom of the wall where our foundations, which are our values, our elite behaviours, and a couple of other things in terms of our fitness and our formation flexibility. And then the rest of the wall is all our facets of play, our little principles of play. And that links into our analysis. And the way we look at it, we go, if we get all this right, then our wall's strong. We got a great chance of winning football matches. If any of these principles aren't there, if there's any bricks missing, then we're leaving ourselves open to defeat. And what that does, that just feeds back into our analysis. That feeds back into the analysis with the players, which is very interactive, and it stops you just walking around going, we were this, you were
F
this,
and F that,
it was that. As long as they've given you everything, that's different. Then you look at it, and when we do our analysis, we look at a certain aspect and we go, that was good, that was good, that was missing. What do we need to, and again, the players will recognise it. They will recognise itself. Sometimes we'll be 5 minutes into that and they're going, Robbo, we didn't do this, we didn't do that as well as the other day, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's so key. The game is passionate enough without you kind of losing your head a bit. Losing your head. I mean, there's the reason...
There's testosterone flying everywhere in that changing room.
The reason we love the game so much, Joe, is because it's anything can happen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? At any point, you can be dominant and find yourself 1-0 down. You know, that's why we love the game. That's why it's the greatest game in the world, because even with your planning, even with doing so much right, you can be on the end of a defeat. And there's not many sports like that. Most sports, if you're dominant and you win. With football, there's so many variables. So the way I look at it is, all you can do is load the odds in your favour as best as you possibly can to get the result.
The result you
want.
need.
And if you do that, and then you reflect in a process, then hopefully you'll be fine. And it takes away, as I said, that knee-jerk reaction. Don't get me wrong, if we lose a game, of course I'm emotional. I mean,
100%.
I struggle with that personally, because I want to stay calm for my players. So I'd say, in terms of the biggest thing I deal with is my own personal emotion, because I don't want to be like that to the players. I don't want to be the one who's absolutely slaughtered a player. You know, I don't want to be that person.
No.
So sometimes when I'm alone, it's then dealing with a defeat. You know, so I've got to probably be better with that, because, you know, you can't carry everything. You've got to have someone that you can talk to, you know. So
100%. So that brings me on to my last question that I like to say to everyone. What do you want to be remembered as? Or for? The silence is deadly.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot now.
Yeah, just someone who players looked back and said, that person genuinely gave me, he did everything to make me the best I could be.
Yeah.
On and off the pitch, really. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. That's my goal.
Do you pride yourself on being that, not I say voice to the players, but like having that man management skill where you feel at whatever level you're at, or what player you're with, you can they believe in what you're saying because of the relationship you have?
And it's not so much just believe. I think it's guiding them. You know, it's not believing what I'm saying and what I am. It's guiding them to find themselves and be what they want to be. You know, so you know, probably the best moment I had this year, which is crazy because obviously becoming Wimbledon head coach is incredible for me.
Yeah,
and emotional. But the best moment of the year was I had 8-9 of the lads who I coached 4 or 5 years ago in the youth team. They turned up at my home and they'd bought me, like, they'd framed a shirt with photos.
Oh, amazing.
And you know, this is 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And they turned up and they had one of the players who was in America. He was there on FaceTime.
Oh, amazing.
They had another one who was elsewhere. And yeah, they just turned up and they'd arranged it with my wife and said, listen, when's he going to be coming out? So I've come out the front door and I could recognise a few and I thought, what are they doing here? Like, it's COVID.
They're not the bin men.
Yeah, I thought they at a party and I'm going, what are you like? And they'd come and you know, to be honest, only 3 of them have made it as pros. The others are doing brilliant. One's a teacher, one's doing great in a state agency. And that makes you feel proud, you know, because you think, well, this is 4 or 5 years later, and they're coming to me going, Robbo, we're so proud of you, of what you've done, and that's it, really. That's all. You just want to feel that you've made a difference to people's life in a positive way, and if you're doing 100%. That, and you're doing that to everyone around you, then hopefully you'll be a success yourself.
Amazing, mate. That's all my questions I've got today for you.
Thanks, John.
Cheers for coming on, mate. Honestly, absolute pleasure. Cheers for having us down at the training grounds.
Sorry about the bee.
No, mate. Honestly, Jack's sweating behind the camera.
He's done well. It's part of my plan. It's a bit of robustness and resilience. That's right.
But yes, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new. And yeah, mate. Cheers for coming on.
Cheers. Thanks, John.